Hi, everybody, and welcome to the very first panel session of the 45th Murrow Symposium. Really awesome to be doing this from the comfort of a spare bedroom / craft room from my own house, but that's the way it's going to go for most of this event. Really excited to begin this whole deal, and starting with this very first session called the Evolving Landscape of Local News. We were just having a discussion before we started about the fact that we are here doing this from bedrooms and really from workspaces that we've sort of been, getting accustomed to over the last year or so. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Matt Lovelace. I am a scholarly assistant professor here at the Murrow College, in and out of, or I should say, in and around local newsrooms for since about 2005, and worked at a number of different television stations before coming back to my alma mater, which has been just a blessing. And I'm very happy to be moderating this particular panel and a couple of others here. And I want to introduce our panelists today. First of all, Jessie Kane, the executive news director from KREM 2 News. Jessie, thank you so much for being here. I'd love for you to give a little bit of an introduction. Also a Coug.
That is very true. So hello, everyone. I am the graduating class of 2002. And it is wonderful to be able to return to the symposium to talk to all of you about what it's like to be in this business, how this business has changed. So if you do the math, if I graduated in 2002, I'm about to celebrate 19 years in this business. I have come up through the producer ranks, executive producer, assistant news director, before stepping into the news director role, and worked in a variety of markets across the country. And I'm excited to be here this morning.
And I also want to introduce Patrick Nelson, the senior reporter and consumer investigations reporter for KOAA-TV, part of EW Scripps Company. Patrick, thank you so much for being here. A former classmate, a Cable 8 mate of mine as well.
It's great to be here. I remember sitting in on many of these panels for symposiums in the past, so it's really awesome to be able to try to give back in any way that I can. And the networking is always so important. I mean, one of the best things I feel about being a Coug is the Cougar Network. And I've worked in 5 different states in TV news in my brief 10-year career. I graduated from Washington State in 2009. So I've definitely seen the Cougar Network go to work and how important it is. It's awesome to see someone like Matt come back to Washington State and be able to share the knowledge that he has. And so I just kind of want to do the same thing. So I'm really happy to be here and answer any questions and just kind of give my testimony on what I've experienced, not only in this last year with the pandemic, but working in several different newsrooms and with different ownership groups who all kind of approach news a little bit differently, even though they're within the same industry. So really happy to be here today.
Well, thank you, Patrick. And we'll get to a number of questions. We would love your questions coming via our symposium chat there. We'll answer as many as we possibly can. I, of course, have a list as well. And if I learned anything in local TV news over 15 years, it's that there's nothing quite like a smooth transition. So let's talk about that strong network. Patrick, I'll ask you the first question. One of the things I know you wanted to talk about was building that network, particularly on your social media channels. How important is that right now, particularly for our students who I know are a little concerned about the job market during the pandemic?
So what is awesome is, especially the LinkedIn network, you will find recruiters who can actually help you match up your goals and desires and maybe your strengths of your career with what news directors are looking for. And so I am a big believer in the LinkedIn platform, and I didn't use it as much when I was looking for my first job, but once I got that foot in the door and within the industry, it was a really great platform to be able not just to network, but to be able to display your work daily, because obviously everyone that is looking for a job is going to put out a resume reel that's supposed to be the best of the best of what they've done during their time at whichever station they're at. But I feel like a platform like LinkedIn, even Twitter, Facebook, if you have like a page, if you're already in the industry, or even if you're a college student, just an opportunity to display your work there, it can keep your work kind of in the back of the minds of people who are hiring. for these jobs. And so I, again, am a big believer. And so if any of you guys are on LinkedIn and you want to find me, Patrick Nelson on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to connect with you. And what's cool is once we connect, then that gives you access to my network, because it's basically first level connections and then second level connections, which are the people who basically are connected to someone you're connected with. And sometimes that can help you make a connection you wouldn't have made otherwise. So definitely leverage those social media networks and use them as a platform to get your work out there. Because I know, like at the EW Scripps company, their big thing is getting eyes on our journalism. And so that, I think, is a great thing, that we can reach people, not just in our markets that we work in or right there in, Eastern Washington, but you can put work out there that can get picked up anywhere around the world. So I definitely think those platforms are a big part of opening up doors for potential opportunities.
And Jessie, I want to bring you back in just to talk about, your newsroom leader, and you've had to manage. I mean, I'm not exactly sure when you became executive news director there. It had to be around or right before the pandemic hit. I'm curious what you saw, maybe on the onset of COVID-19, what it did to local newsrooms, and sort of a year later, what might be here to stay? What would be some good, valuable information as far as that's concerned?
Sure, absolutely. So I transitioned into the role that I'm in the midst of a pandemic. Who does that? So when the pandemic first hit, so I refer to it as the great scatter of March 2020. That's when we all had to clear out and go to our separate spaces. So when that happened, I was working for the Tegna station in Sacramento as the assistant news director. So the feeling at the moment was much like, I'm sure, what you experienced. It's the unknown, the angst, the what is this? How are we going to get through this? What does this look like? And what does this feel like? And what do you mean I have to take everything that I have at my desk or I've taken out with me in the field, and it's all got to go home? And how do you do that? So all credit to all of our engineering and IT departments, whether you're at WSU right now, whether you were in the business at any station, the ability to be able to pick up and head home was a heavy lift for everyone in making that happen. And then figuring out, how do you tell stories when you can't go anywhere? You're stuck at home, or you're stuck in the office and can't go talk to people and see people in 3D, in trying to manage what platform are you talking to folks on? How do you talk to them? How do you record on it? How do you get back to the station? How do you get things put together so it can go out on the air? So just the logistical lift that people needed to do and figure out how to make it work was significant and commendable at every level, from schools to businesses, in making it happen. And people did it being uneasy. We didn't know what we were dealing with and how long we thought we were going to be in this. At first, it was like, oh, it's just going to be for 2 weeks. Oh, it's just going to be until Easter. Oh, and here we are, a year or so later, and we're still in some semblance of what we've encountered. So, really it was survival mode that we were all in. And then, as it has ebbed and flowed, and, we've gotten, further along in the research, have felt an increased level of comfort of, yes, you can go out in the field and shoot this, but think about this, you've got to wear your mask, you've got to, have special equipment so that people aren't touching your gear. And having, just like you've got contactless delivery, if someone brings pizza to your door, how are you going to cover news in a contactless type way, with still having that separation, that boundary? So it has, ebbed and flowed, and still something that we, think about out in the field. And how do we keep our people safe? How do we keep the people who we're talking to safe? And then, also here for folks who are, in the station, it's very different if you're in the studio right now with the amount of separation that you've got to have between folks. So things are starting to ease up as, people are getting vaccinated at large as a community, and we're getting to know more about the virus. But yeah, everything I'd say that you're encountering at school or wherever you're working is what it was like for our business too. And then in thinking about, okay, so what is it that's here to stay? What's valuable? What have we learned? A lot of times, I'm sure Patrick can attest to this, you might be sent on a story that is hours away, and you're like, I'm spending more than half of my shift just trying to get somewhere and trying to get an interview. So depending on what the interview is, what the story is, there may be value in doing it just the way that we're talking right now from an efficiency standpoint. So people can get time back in their day to be able to work on the storytelling, to be able to work on the multimedia components, the digital, the social media that goes with it, and not lose so much time in the car. Granted, you got to balance that with, you still want the human connection, because it's different. If we were doing this in person, this would have a different vibe than how we're doing it virtually. So you got to pick what makes sense there. But there is validity from a efficiency standpoint, and thus too, in the old days, people would come to the station and start their day sitting in a conference room for the editorial meeting. That may not be the most efficient way for people to start their day so that they can quickly get out and start news gathering.
And, just Patrick, following your social media timeline, you've been like, to me, the poster boy for adaptation during COVID-19, because, correct me if any of this is mischaracterized, but I believe you were in a spare bedroom for a while that eventually became the baby's room. So you were kicked out to your green screen in your garage. Does that sound right?
That's absolutely right. So, March 12th, 2020, my news director comes to me and goes, this might go on for a while, and we got to know if we can do this. So are you willing to kind of be the guinea pig and see if you can do this from home? And so I was like, sure, I guess, so I grabbed my laptop, not thinking that would be my last day in the studio for more than a year now. Like, I literally have not set foot in our building in more than a year. So yeah, as Matt mentioned, I have a 4-month-old baby now, and I have a 4-year-old son. So, God bless my wife, because she's wrangling them, when I'm doing interviews or, trying to voice track something. You just got to have that life balance, which is really challenging when you're doing this. But yeah, I was an upstairs bedroom for a few months, and then that became the nursery. So I basically got booted down to the kitchen for a little while. But when you have a 4-year-old that's running the house, I mean, the kitchen, like, I'm in a tri-level townhome. So the kitchen is kind of like the mainstay of the house, coming up or going down. So that didn't work very long. So eventually I carved out a space in the garage with a green screen, because our station rolled us out with chroma keys to basically make it where we could still visually have a studio shot, even though we were at home. Because for the longest time, the shot was my 32-inch Samsung TV that was just like a backup TV that I just plugged in an HDMI cable and put a graphic in, and that was kind of my home studio. But eventually it evolved and it actually got a lot more sophisticated with the chroma key and using some special editing technology to put different backgrounds in behind me, and actually working with our production staff to say, okay, so you're not just going to be straight down the middle on this shot. You're going to be a little bit off to the left, because in this chroma key shot, we have a monitor over your shoulder, things like that. And they would actually, back at the station, roll on a live shot of that part of the studio. And then I would pop it in basically over the green screen in the background. So these are all things that, like, we didn't have to think about ever before. And mind you, this is in eventually the winter time in Colorado. I'm down in this garage, so I've got space heaters going, because there was some concern I'd be in a suit with this chroma key and I'd be like blowing smoke, right? Like, as I'm talking, because it's literally freezing in my garage or below freezing. So, I mean, you just adapt and you do the best that you can. But the good news is, I really feel like we're starting to come out the other side of all this. But as Jessie had mentioned, I think there are going to be some major changes to this industry. I know for us in Colorado Springs at KOAA, the NBC affiliate, we are probably not going to have any more of these in-person editorial meetings. I mean, sure, there might be all station meetings eventually where they want everyone in one room to discuss something. But I mean, all in all, when it comes to the reporter workflow and workload, it doesn't make sense for a lot of us to drive 30 minutes across town, especially if it's a snowstorm or something like that, to go sit in a room for a meeting when we can hop on a Zoom call now, say, here's what I'm working on today, and be off and running with our day. So I think from a workflow perspective, I think it is really good to have this option. But as Jessie had mentioned, also, just to kind of piggyback a great point she meant, she had there was just this idea that it's with workflow, it's really risk versus gain in a lot of your day, right? It's like, okay, you can go get this awesome interview, but what are you maybe risking as far as deadline or what you're going to have? So you got to make compromises throughout the day. So for example, when I was working in Fresno, California, a lot of times we would have to go to Yosemite to get an awesome story. I mean, the visuals are incredible, right? I mean, that national park is gorgeous. You can get great interviews and stuff, but you're driving 2 hours, windy roads up there, and there's basically no internet connection. So basically, you have to come back down the hill an hour to be able to get that internet connection. So you really have to work closely with your producers and folks in your newsroom to say, what I like to do for me personally, I like to lead with what I can do rather than what I can't do, because sometimes that'll be interpreted as like, oh, they don't want to do the work. And we know that's not true because our crews in the field do a lot with the technology that we have. So I would just say communicate. We're in this industry, but sometimes we don't communicate everything very well. And so it's awesome that we have all these options and we can go live on our phones and things like that. But maybe we sacrifice the live shot on our phone to be able to go get a great interview and tell a better story an hour later in the newscast. You know what I mean? Things like that. So I think it's great to have it all at the touch of our fingers at home, in the field, but also I think we need to weigh, what we do and how important it is to get it out there right away, and how important it is to have something that's maybe more thorough and more quality, I guess you could say, later on.
And Jessie, I was going to, we have some questions in the chat now, which is great. Keep them coming, please, from our symposium hub there. I'm going to wrap a couple of them into one because both of them are sort of related to this adaptation to COVID. Somebody out there curious about what the number of staff is that might be coming back when this is all over, or if there are some long-term stay-at-home positions that are possible. And second, Zoom interviews. Everybody has learned how to do a Zoom interview. What's the long-term status and expectation of these remote computer interviews that we've gotten so accustomed to?
All right, let's see. Let's dive in, folks. So each station is going to handle things differently. So I can speak from my perspective here at the mighty KREM 2, just up the road from Pullman. So we have about half of our content team is here in the building. The other half of our content team is still working remotely. Folks who are here in the building are directly tied to the production. So I know you're going to say, hey, everybody on the content team plays a role in the production. But when I say that, so I'm talking about anchors, I'm talking about directors, I'm talking about producers, I'm talking about editors, I'm talking about leadership. Because when you're thinking about the overall shows, the entirety of the shows, the people that are involved from start to finish are based here. We are evenly split between two newsrooms. So we have our regular traditional newsroom as one workspace. And then we've taken over the sales office for our second newsroom so that people are even more spread out inside. And then therefore our MSJs, our photojournalists, our digital team are still working from home. What it looks like from an integration standpoint and bringing more folks back, it'll be a slow but steady process, and something that I can be transparent, we're still working through. I can't give you an answer right now because I don't know what the next few months, what the rest of 2021 or 2022 will look like. And there may be, there might be roles that we decide, hey, this makes sense to be, permanently remote and not in the building, or, someone who, may just not be in the building as much because of what we've established workflow wise. Makes sense that, hey, coming to the building actually slows you down. So that is kind of the lay of the land here. And then in regards to the Zoom interviews, for better or for worse, that's how we're used to, this is how we're used to seeing each other right now, is through Zoom. We're not used to seeing each other in person in 3D. So I think there is going to be some level of normalcy, expectation. Like, it's cool. This is the way that we see our coworkers. This is the way that we see the people who we talk to for stories. This is the way we even see our family right now. So, it's much more acceptable. And I think it will continue to be, going forward than, it may have been viewed in the past. But you've got to weigh, depending on what that story is. If you're talking to a family who has lost a loved one or and it's that emotion. It's hard sometimes to get that emotion when it comes through like this. So that's where I think both will have a place. And, when things quote unquote go back to normal, Zoom will still be part of it depending on what the interview is for.
We should mention we were using Zoom before the pandemic, just not as many of us knew how to do it, myself included, very well. Now we're just more accustomed to it. Well, I'd like to take a little bit of a break because most of the questions are related to COVID-19 and the pandemic, as most everybody's questions about anything have been for the past year. And I do just want to tease a topic before we actually ask a question about it. Somebody asked about valuable skills that this generation of student journalists could bring to the workforce that maybe don't exist there now that they're learning the pandemic. So I just want you to think about that one. In the news, we call that a tease. But I want to just talk about the business in general. One of the great things I always loved about the symposium was just hearing stories about the business, the journey, the adventure. Patrick, I don't know that I know anybody who's lived in as many different cities in the amount of time that you've been in the business as you have. Now, I'm probably going to miss some, but I know Laredo, Texas, Colorado Springs, Green Bay, Fresno, which, by the way, a few different climates in there as well. Somebody has asked, what is it like to jump state to state? And do sometimes you feel like a fish out of water in a new TV market?
Well, it's really interesting because I think my opening experience in TV news was so important because I'll be honest with you, Matt, when we were doing Cable 8, we were doing ITL, Inside the Lines. I mean, in 2009, the economy was in a really tough place. There were not many jobs. I graduated with some really great broadcasters that unfortunately just never were able to get a start in this career. And they've gone on to have great careers in other fields. But I mean, there were very few of us that got the opportunity to start. And for me, I had to move to Laredo, Texas, as Matt had mentioned. And if you don't know where Laredo is, then you probably haven't been watching the news lately because there's been some reporting going on in Laredo, and that's because it's right down on the border. And going there was very interesting for me personally because it's a community that's 98% Hispanic. So going there, a lot of people assumed I worked for Border Patrol or the TV station when I first got there because there weren't a lot of people in that community every day that looked like me. And so initially, being right out of college, tested on my own in a new area I'd never been to with a lot of cultural barriers that I wasn't used to, even being born and raised in San Diego, which is a border town. This was still much different. But what was awesome is I learned that, okay, I'm not bilingual, but if I went to these neighborhoods and I tried to speak in Spanish, or at least like tried to meet them halfway, that kind of helped grow that respect. And so I think going through that initially was really big for me. And then really you have to weigh your options as you're building your career. For me, just in my almost 2 years in Laredo, I left after pretty much my contract was up after 2 years. As most of you probably already know, the industry standard is usually 2 to 3 year contracts for different jobs. And so I traditionally have signed 2 or 3 year contracts. So I was on a 2-year contract at the time. And I had gone from being a news reporter, 9 p.m. CW anchor. So I was reporting for the NBC affiliate, anchoring for the CW affiliate at 9 o'clock. Eventually, I got promoted to weekend sports anchor. So I was kind of a hybrid. I was doing news during the week, reporting on drug busts, and then I was doing football games on Friday night. So it was great because it was a first market and I could kind of try a little bit of everything and really spread my wings and see what I wanted to do. Well, to get my next job, I kind of realized, I might have to check the sports stuff for right now because there weren't a lot of opportunities. So I actually came to Colorado Springs as a morning reporter where I was able to use some of the ad-libbing techniques that I had used as a sports anchor and sports reporter in the morning. And I realized I really loved live reporting in the morning. And then in Colorado Springs, we had the Waldo Canyon fire, which was a huge fire. It burned like 350 homes down in our area. It was getting national coverage. And throughout that, our station actually went on the air for 3 straight days without a commercial. That's like how serious it was. And so as the morning reporter, I did more live shots than anyone else. And so they leaned on me pretty hard during that. And that actually helped me transition to another promotion to weekend sports anchor there. And so I did that for 3 months. That's it. And then I sold out and went back to news because it was a lifestyle thing. It was a 2-man department at the station I was at, and I was salary, and I was working more than 60 hours a week. It was awesome. I was driving to Denver to interview Peyton Manning during the week, but at the time I was dating my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and there were some crossroads there where I had to decide what was important. And some people choose career, which is important, but part of the reason I've moved around has been not only to climb the ladder, but because of new opportunities. And when we were in Fresno, eventually I got promoted to investigative reporter. And that's where I developed my passion for consumer issues and fraud issues. And I kind of realized, this is an area I really want to specialize in. And so I'll just kind of tie this all together here and say that starting out, it was great to try everything. And I loved covering breaking news, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's important to understand how to cover breaking news and be efficient there. But a lot of people in the industry, as you move up, they're good at breaking news, but it's important to try to figure out what you're passionate about, what you read about, what can be your niche, what sets you apart. Like when you're in an editorial meeting and someone's like, oh, this is an issue on education. Are you that expert? Are you taking on that beat? Are you the person that's like, I want to be the go-to reporter for that? And that's kind of how I've tried to develop my career. Is I still love sports, but it was mixing what I like to do in my personal time with work. And what I realized is that work for me was really drilling down on people getting scammed. I felt like there was a stigma there that people basically were being written off as like, oh, only a fool falls for these scams. But guess what? Look at this pandemic and look at all the fraud that we've seen, whether it's unemployment insurance or people getting scammed on email hacks, things like that. I mean, we're seeing this area explode. And so that was the area I really wanted to focus on, and that's become my niche. So I would just say, as you go along, even right now, when you're still learning how to do this, if there's an area you're interested in, read up and try to become an expert and make contacts in that field, because I'm telling you, that's going to really set you apart if you have a niche and an area of reporting that you are better at than anyone else because you've done so much in that area.
I want to follow that up, and this could be a question for both of you, because I feel like for anybody who's spent enough time in the news industry, you go through the occasional existential crisis, like, what am I doing here? Why am I subjecting myself to these hours? I definitely had thoughts like that early in my career. In fact, we had a guest in our class yesterday who said after a few months at her first job in Spokane, she wondered if it was for her, if the pressure was worth it. Now, that person is Ana Cabrera, who, as of 2 weeks from now, will be a weekday CNN, midday anchor. And she has one of the most successful careers of any Coug out there. She had one of those existential crises. So what are some of the big obstacles you think you had to overcome in your careers?
Yeah, so in jumping in there, I guess I'll take both questions and run with both for a little bit. I would say, as you are starting out, be open to opportunities, be open to what is out there, and the opportunity that may present itself may not be exactly what you're looking for in the market that you're looking for, but it's a foot in the door to start your career. So I am all about adventures. People, even at this point in my career, keep telling me, hey, just go take an adventure, just go try something out. It's a process. And in that process is also the balance of work, because this business, it's a pressure cooker. That's what we do. We are driven by deadlines. We are driven by accuracy. We are driven by expectations of, integrity, excellence, you name it. It's a lot. So for people, they may get on into this business, and once you get into a newsroom, whether it's virtual or in person, it may be like, whew, this is different than I thought, and I'm not made for this. You may get into it, and then X number of years, months down the road, kind of have that moment like, is this really what I want to do? And whatever that answer is, that's okay. Go with your heart. I know I've had some of those low moments because I run at a zillion miles an hour. And sometimes it can get exhausting with the pace of news that we keep up with, the people dynamic that's part of it too. So when you get to a certain point, you know, it is that gut check. Is this something that I love? Is this something that I'm passionate about? It might just be a bump in the road, and you got to push through it. And then you get to the other side and you're better for it. And you continue to have a long career in this business. So, I think it's very common in this industry because of the pace and the stress that we deal with, that at some point people are going to have that. Am I made for this? Is this what I want to do? So that is totally normal in this business.
And Patrick, I'll just sort of lob you the same question. Did you ever have that moment that like, what am I doing? You know, you get past that obstacle in your career?
I'll be honest. I know, like you had mentioned, Ana Cabrera, she was a huge, mentor for me. I mean, she was the one that helped me develop my resume tape when I was first trying to break in. So again, leaning on the Cougar network and folks that have gone down this road is so important, because that's where you're going to find encouragement. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Sometimes in our newsrooms, in the day-to-day, and people are feeling pressure from upper management, things like that. I mean, it's not always the most positive place. So trying to get that, good enthusiasm, those good vibes. I have something within the newsrooms I work in. We call it the positivity posse, where we actually have a jar in our newsroom. We called it the Rockstar jar, where if during the week someone stepped up and did something awesome, you just jot a note and put it in there. And every Friday we would get the jar out and read it, because we felt like people were being overlooked for doing great things every day. And it wasn't like the station was necessarily sponsoring this or recognizing this, but finding that encouragement in areas where you can find positivity are very important. But also, I mean, I can't, just overlook it. Burnout is real. And I know Matt and Jessie have seen it in their careers, that there are a lot of good journalists that are doing other things, or, they just realized that it wasn't for them because they did burn out. And so I think managing your workflow on a daily basis and expectations are important, but also managing your own mental health. In this around the clock news cycle, especially trying to prove yourself out of the gate, I think a lot of reporters out in the field, especially one man band, MMJs, they can do two things that I think can be really problematic. One, I think they can put themselves in compromising situations because they want to get that live shot. They want to get that stand up. They want to prove themselves. But I know I did that. I put myself in situations where, looking back, I'm like, yeah, that probably wasn't the safest. Or like, yeah, that wasn't, and what I gained from it wasn't what I was hoping to gain from it necessarily at the time. So I would say, just take care of yourself in that front. And then also the mental health aspect, unplug. It's so easy to just, especially now that we can have our emails on our phone nonstop. So like, really, I have a company phone, I have emails, like really any time of the day, my station can say, hey, Patrick, what do you think of this? Hey, do you think you can do this? Hey, can you line this up? And it's like, you got to set up healthy boundaries. And what I think is not every newsroom is going to be the same. Not every manager is going to be the same, but the type of newsroom you want to work in and the type of manager you want to work for is someone that's going to help you respect those boundaries. Because honestly, if I'm burnout, I'm no good to the newsroom, because I'm coming in the walking wounded every day, trying to like just get through my shift. And honestly, this is an awesome job. It is hard, but what I think it was Paula in the chat had a question asking about how do we set ourselves apart from the so-called news shows or the entertainment aspect of this. I love local news because we are living it too. Our viewers, we're their neighbors. So if they are going through something, whether it's a snowstorm or this pandemic, like, we all understand it, because when we are living our daily lives with our families, we're going through it too. And I think that's what's important, is to be authentic and let people know, like, yes, I'm on TV, but also like I live a block from you and I understand what you're going through because I'm going through it too. And I really believe that's how local news is going to survive this, is because people have seen us in our homes trying to do a job. Like that separation is a little smaller now. And I think it's a really good thing, especially for someone like me that works in that consumer scam realm. Like, I want people to feel comfortable being vulnerable and reaching out to me, knowing that like I'm not going to use them as an example of what not to do. I'm going to try to help them because I'm their neighbor and I don't want my neighbor to get ripped off. And so in the overall scheme of that, I would just say that you just got to take care of yourself first. I know it's easier said than done, and you don't always get to pick your situation, because if you have an opportunity, go for it, but just know what's healthy and what's not. And if you need help determining that, I'm sure Jessie would say you could reach out to her, you could reach out to Matt, anyone in this Cougar network, and we will try to walk through that with you.
And that is important. Like, the self-care is critical, regardless of what your position is, what your responsibility is, what your expectation is. You could ask anyone in this newsroom, you could ask my family. We all want me to run, because running is what keeps me sane, and running is what helps me be better, so that I can be better for the newsroom, I can be better for my family, I can be better for me. So, know that that's always critical, and communicating and letting people know that is important so that they can know how to be helpful, especially in this world where, since we're seeing each other more this way than just being able to see people and body language and kind of more like picking up on the subtle hints that you can pick up on when you're in person, communication is really key. And to go back to what Patrick had said earlier, I can understand it. From being, a new MSJ, trying to prove yourself, I came up through the producer ranks. So, producing a newscast, you want to come across as competent. You want to come across as, I got this, and the answer is, you're just starting your career. There's so much to learn. I mean, I look back and think about where I was when I started, and I still have a lot to learn, folks. So communication is key. So if you're out covering a story or you're producing a show and like things are just falling apart on you, communication is key, because then solutions can be figured out, and priorities can be set to set people up for success. There's a saying that goes that we're in the communication business, but what we fail to do is communicate. And that's with each other, like inward facing, because we all just work so fast and we want to do the best that we can. But it really is a team effort. And that's what I love about this business, is that a newsroom, a content team is just that. It is a team that's bonded together because of what we do.
Continuing to look through this chat, obviously a lot of great questions. I promise we'll get to some of that career prep stuff in a second. I also want to touch on, reading the chat. Patrick mentioned seeing Paula's question about differentiating between entertainment news and how, maybe there's a broader conversation there about the perception of local news, particularly the last 4 or 5 years. What local news has been sort of branded as by people who maybe don't like us so much. I'll turn that question back to Jessie, just because Patrick kind of touched on it a bit already. How do you differentiate yourself from those entertainment news programs? Why is KREM 2 the place people should go to find storytelling?
Because we're here in the community. We are invested in the community. We live in it too. We're out and about. And that's what makes local news so powerful, is that we're here and in it as well. Because it is tough. Before we hopped on this link, looking at the most recent info on, mistrust, perceived bias, such like that exists right now, in the perception of mistrust of media. Because inward facing, as someone who works in this business, it just breaks my heart, because I know every day myself and every other, journalist walks into what our core ethic is as journalists, is to remain unbiased and tell the truth. That's what we signed up for. And that's what we do. And that is our intention. And so, that's why it's critical that we give the facts. We're clear, like if there's things we don't know or things we're still trying to get answers to, that we can be transparent to show that we are speaking the truth and that we are vested. And then, that's really, I guess, when you speak about, what makes local news important, yes, you're in the community. And so because you're in the community, you're vested in the goodness of the community and making it a better place. So yeah, it's tough with the perception of mistrust, because I know at the root of it that we're all striving to do the best that we can. So it is. That reality is tough to swallow.
And I think if I add my 2 cents, one of the big things that I harp on in my class is that we have to build our stories around these people in our community. And I'm sure for you, Patrick, it's not just that there's a scam. You need to find the person who was scammed and tell their story and get that real story in the community. Is that sort of the way you shape your stories?
Absolutely. And one thing, just to piggyback what Jessie was saying, is another thing that I know folks that are going to be graduating from college here soon. And even, I mean, as long ago as when Matt and I were in college. I mean, Matt, you probably remember
Not that
Facebook.
long ago, Patrick.
Hey, but you remember Facebook. It used to be, you used it to find out who you could study with, who had the same classes. It wasn't this open news feed that just all bets are off, things are crazy out there, and it's really hard. We're just coming out of an election year, obviously. One thing that I think sets local news apart that's so important, and I think I've seen coworkers make this misstep, and so I'm hoping anyone listening who's looking at applying for jobs will take a close look at their social media, because even liking a post that may have a political slant to it can compromise who you are as a journalist. You might think it's no big deal, but at EW Scripps Company, they take it incredibly seriously. And I'm not making a big deal out of nothing here. We actually have to sign a social media ethics sheet that basically says, here's the policy. And, even if I'm impacted by some government policy, whether it's at the local level, state level, if I'm out there in the public forum voicing opinion, it's not my job to have opinions. And that could compromise me as a journalist, and it could actually compromise my ability to be employed. And so I would just say social media is great to connect. We want to share pictures, we want to do things, but let's just make sure we don't compromise ourselves before our career even starts, right? Because I know a lot of employers will look at that because they want to know what kind of character you have before you even come into a newsroom. And so again, I know these things can get so polarized. All our family members are posting, all our friends are posting. And trust me, I've had to bite a hole in my lip at family gatherings, stuff like that. I've had to break my fingers because I just want to get on there and be like, are you sure about that? Especially when people start to throw out the term the media, right? Like, oh, the media is doing this. Like somehow I work for NBC in Colorado Springs and Lester Holt is on the phone telling me, oh, this is what you're going to say in your story today. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that really don't have a concept, but they're really trolling us on social media. So I would just say, try to take a deep breath, take a beat. I know it's not always easy, but think about it before you press send or before you respond, because I really do think that's what will set you apart as a journalist, is if people can't pinpoint a tweet or a post saying that you're biased, because it doesn't exist.
And this will sort of build off that question. Mitchell had asked one a little bit ago on the chat. How do you think being a reporter has shaped the way you think, behave, or carry yourself? So I'll preface this with a story about like me at the grocery store. I did not want to have RBF. And I think most of us know what that means. I want them to think I'm the pleasant news guy, because I never knew when one interaction at the store was going to make them go, that morning guy, he's a real jerk. He wasn't nice to me. And so I'll say that being in the profession has caused me to constantly assess my behavior on social, in public, the expressions on my face. Curious if either of the two of you have had that experience as well.
So yes, that's where, there is an expectation, right? Because, I represent myself, Jessie Kane, but, at this moment I am representing KREM, or at other stations that I have worked at in the past, are the stations that, I represent. And at the end of the day, I'm a journalist. So yes, there definitely needs to be that awareness of, what you're putting out there, what you're putting in real life. So it's as simple as, from what it's as simple as bumping into someone in the grocery store, and that's going to be more real life for someone who's on air besides me, instead of me behind the scenes. The good news about my position is that I can kind of go about life outside of work, and no one's going to bump into me and be like, oh, you're the news director at KREM. But people who are watching TV or on social media could be, oh, hey, Patrick Nelson, KOAA, cool. I saw you on TV. But, if you were to go right now to any of my social media accounts, if you were to do a search for Jessie Kane, it's professional. It's still personal. You're gonna know that, yes, I'm a Coug, folks, but right now I am rooting for the Zags. You're gonna know that I'm a runner. You're gonna find out that I'm a mom. You're gonna find out that I just did a kitchen remodel. You're gonna find out that stuff. But that's cool as a journalist, because it's unbiased, but you're getting a little peek at me, so it's still professional. So yeah, it is. It's a, I say burden, but it's also an honor, depending on how you want to look at it, in knowing that we are held to a higher standard as journalists based off of the profession that we're choosing.
An excellent, Patrick, I'll let you answer quickly because I think a couple of excellent points have been brought up in the chat, but I'll let you give your response here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things that I've experienced, like when I first started my career and I was just 22 years old, right out of college, single, there wasn't too many things to worry about. So I felt like I could be more open in who I was as a person in my personal life, things like that. And there wasn't a big divide from when I'm on air and when I'm at home. But I will say, when I started taking on investigative journalism, where not everyone likes you, I'm very protective of my family. In a network environment like this, where there's a certain level of professionalism and trust. Like, I have no problem talking about my family, being really open about who I am as a person. But when it comes to viewers, I really don't want them knowing too much about my family, to be honest with you. And that's just a boundary to protect my family. And so really, like, on my professional platforms, you'll find very little about my family on there. And it's not that I don't love my family. It's definitely just the idea that, I feel like if maybe I'm a morning anchor or I'm an anchor and maybe that's part of my brand, then maybe my family is more involved. Like our morning anchor at KOAA, Bree Groves, she basically did entire stories about going through pregnancy and her family life and stuff like that. So that's part of her brand, which is great. But my thing is, if I have to go investigate, somebody who is a business owner that might later on come back for some retribution, I want him coming after me as a journalist, not after my family. And that's not to scare anyone, but I'm just very cautious about it because I've seen, what can happen. But as far as how I carry myself, again, I mean, I feel like people just see me live my life, and that's what I want them to see, is that I'm their neighbor. I live here too. Like, when I have to go out and shovel the snow and it stinks, like, they're doing it too. I'm doing it too. So yeah, I think it's just being authentic and whatnot. But I also think we can sometimes overextend and put too much on social media as an on-air person, and it could be a safety issue later on, depending on what your role is. So that's just something to think about.
Well, I do, once again, I want to leave a little bit of time for some of that career advice for the last few minutes. And I say that because the next question I ask could fill a 6-hour journalism ethics discussion. So let's try to wade into that in a few minutes. It's not going to do it justice. A couple of questions on the chat asking about objectivity and, of course, and how you interact online. And we talked a bit about that. What if you're supporting the ideas behind the Black Lives Matter movement? What if you say, I support my gay friend's right to be married? Very good questions, because there's this different thought process between, is it political? Is it human rights? How should people think about these things, these advocacy things that they may not view as political ideologies as much as human right issues? Jessie, do you have a thought on that when you see that activity on social?
Sure. I'm going to refer to it as a guideline versus a regulation.
Sure.
Because guideline, as we walk through life, each situation is going to be slightly different. So it just can be a guiding light to filter through. So, when we think back over the summer and, there were protests, march all across the country in regards for Black Lives Matter. The guidance that, we gave to our team is, if posting about it on, social media in regards to, the event, and what the message is and what, these advocates are sharing. So, whether they were, participating in the march as, on the clock as a MSJ, photojournalist, or whether they just felt compelled to go to the event, what they would be posting would be, the visuals, the people's stories. And so, yes, I guess to long story short, you know what I mean? Still kind of walking that neutral line, but certainly by bringing attention or posting about Black Lives Matter and the importance of that, or the LGBTQ community, in recognizing its, the connection and posting about it, that can bring awareness and be beneficial without kind of crossing the line of support or anti-support, is a way to think about it. So it's really just step back, take a moment, think about how it might be perceived before posting.
Patrick, do you have thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, these types of decisions and views for hiring managers are above my pay grade. Honestly, I've been doing this for more than 10 years, but I've never hired anyone. So I've never had to make those types of decisions. Obviously, I would have my own views on that, but that's really irrelevant because unfortunately, guys, at this point, I'm not going to be hiring any of you, but maybe one day we can get to that. But I would just say, again, use the network, bounce ideas off of different people that, especially, on LinkedIn. It's actually fairly easy to connect with recruiters, to connect with the people that actually are in the higher levels of these different ownership groups. And honestly, this is what they get paid to answer. So I feel like ask these questions. These are valid and really good questions. And I'm sure when they're sitting in a boardroom deciding the direction of these different broadcast companies and the people they want to hire, I know within my company, diversity is a huge issue right now. And it's not just diversity of, skin color or gender, but it's diversity of ideas and backgrounds. And so I really believe that some of this that maybe would have been controversial in the past might actually be viewed as, here's someone that is bringing a diverse idea to the table. And so it actually might benefit you. I don't know. But yeah, I would just say, seek it out, be a journalist, ask the question and listen to the answer.
As you can see, there's a lot of nuance to this discussion. And certainly if you are an LGBTQ advocate or you're a member of the community and you seem to voice what you seem to view as a human rights support, I'd say that's your prerogative. And maybe you don't want to work for a newsroom that wouldn't support that. So, there are going to be, Jessie, first thing she said was, this is not a rule, this is a guideline. You'll probably get a different response from everybody who you ask that question. So always consider that, but that's a really great question and a great topic there. Now, before we go, we have about a little less than 7 minutes. I want to make sure that we address career readiness. So here we are, near the end of a pandemic, near the end of the pandemic, and students are going to be entering the workforce, particularly my students, their senior year, trying to become news reporters. What can they be doing? What can any news production students be doing to stand out in relation at least to their peers as they graduate and move into the industry? Jessie, I'll start with you.
So to be blunt, it's tough, right? Because there's all of these great college students that are coming out of school, getting ready to come out of school. So how do you stand out in the sea of sameness, And it's tough because there's only so many jobs and so many markets. So to double down on what Patrick said, it's all in who you know. It's that connection and being able to stand out, because we get flooded with resumes, applications, emails, direct messages. So it's tough. So it's like, you got to form, what is going to make you stand out? What is that connection that you have with that someone? What is that unique, experience, that perspective that can make a newsroom better, that's going to make you stand out? So really take a moment to think about, who is it that I know and what is my unique selling opportunity for you as a person, you as a student, you as a journalist, and trying to cut through the clutter when there's so many applicants.
Gosh, there's so much to our jobs now that this answer might not serve you as far as technical abilities, but there's really three things that I think set reporters apart at the local level. And I call it the triple H, right? I think it's hustle, heart, and honesty. Those are the three that I've tried to build my career on. Okay. So really, I think a lot of news directors, especially starting out in that first market, they want someone that is going to be consistent, that's going to show up every day, that's going to wear their heart on their sleeve, try their best. And I think, I don't want to speak for all news directors in those first markets, but they're in those lower markets for a reason. You're supposed to go there and learn on the job. I think what we used to call it back in the day was paid grad school. Basically, you were going, because I'm sure things have changed even since 2009, but I can tell you my first job in Laredo, Texas, I was making $18,000 a year. And all I wanted was a start. I was living in a bug infested apartment, eating a turkey sandwich every day and paying my student loans. But I'm here now, and I can tell you, you can, get through it. But I had a lot of good stories and adventures and fun things that came along with that too. But you're definitely going to have to sacrifice. But I really believe that if you keep those three things in mind, again, hustle, heart, honesty, I think that's going to set you apart as a newsroom citizen. And then as you learn the job and the skills, you'll be able to marry those things together, and it's going to make you an awesome employee for that second job. So just give yourself some grace starting out. Don't feel like you have to know everything. Just keep your ears open, take some good advice, use the network, and you're going to be okay, because editing systems will change. Trust me, I was on tape to tape editing when I started. I had to learn that. And then it's pointless because I didn't use it the rest of my career, but I needed it in the moment. You can always learn the technical skills, but I really do believe that those emotional and heartfelt aspects of why you want to do this in the first place, as long as you stick to those, I think it's really going to make you shine in those big moments.
And for the students on here who are like, what's tape to tape editing? You don't want to know. We won't even broach that subject. That is an old way of doing things. Well, this has been incredible. And you mentioned maybe briefly, I had a question building off of one of your first responses, Patrick, was building a LinkedIn profile. How do you make a LinkedIn profile stand out?
Well, the good news is really you don't even have to make a profile. It kind of sets it up for you. And really all you're doing is posting your resume. And so again, give yourself some grace. If you're just starting your career, the resume on that page is not going to be very big, but it's a vehicle, again, to build your network. It's a tangible way where instead of having to go to a Rolodex or into your cell phone to pull up contacts, it's like, hey, I connect, with students all the time. And I'm just like, hey, go Cougs. If you need me, reach out. And it's just this network of people that you can build. And as you go, you add to your resume. And you can also post on there. You can comment on other posts. You can ask questions. So I wouldn't focus as much on how the profile looks itself. It's more the platform that you can build your profile as you go.
And LinkedIn pro tip is take that time. When you start an account, if you are going to, or maybe you have already, take the step. Like if you were to search Jessie Kane LinkedIn, it's going to come up with my name, like backslash in my name, as opposed to just a series of numbers and letters. So take that time to make it specific because it just looks more professional and polished and searchable, is a tip.
Well, Jessie Kane, Executive News Director at KREM 2, and Patrick Nelson, Consumer Investigator for KOAA-TV. Thank you both so much for taking the time for kicking off the symposium. I thought we had some awesome questions from the crew out there.
Thank you for having us. It was an honor.
It was great. Good to see you both. Like I mentioned, both of you occasional guests in my classes as well. So always appreciate your insight. Now, for those of you watching the symposium now, I do want to mention, since we sort of just barely dipped our toe in the water of that discussion, one of our next panels is about developing your voice for advocacy. Maybe worth continuing that discussion in that panel from 11 to 12. But that's all we have from this panel for now. Once again, Jessie, Patrick, thank you. Thank you to the almost 100 people we had on this single session to get us started, and have a great rest of the 45th symposium.